Greetings, everyone. The peace of Yahweh be with each and every single one of you, and welcome to another episode of Seeds of the Witness. So, it's all quite a challenge, isn't it? Oh man, the great teacher is asleep, and it is game time. Um, Not that it's about playing games in any way. It's the exact opposite. We're not playing games here at the House of Yahweh. But just speaking about the idea of the seriousness of things and everything that the great teacher used to talk about with regard to cramming for the exam. And I don't know if I've ever mentioned it before, but I recall the first time that I heard that, I was like, there's going to be an exam. And it's going to be on the word of Yahweh, everything that we're being taught, and in the house of Yahweh. The man's been teaching for over 40 something years. I have difficulty with just 100 questions. That test would have to have a million questions. How could a person without the subconscious mind ever be expected realistically to pass something like that? But really, just speaking about the need while he was still yet with us to build our minds and to take advantage of the time that we had while we sat at his feet, because there was going to be a time when he'd be gone. And it'd be grown up time then more than any other time period or in any other phase of our calling, it would be about showing and proving. And not being the person, as the great Khan Shaul used to say, that was just all show and no go. All show and no go. It's go time now. It's go time now to go and to get the things done. For some, it's just about whatever Father Yahweh makes evident and plain to them. But for quite a number of us, we don't have any uncertainty with regard to what it is that we need be doing. We know. We know. He made sure that we knew. And this all boils down to whether or not we are going to remain firm and just to go and get it done. Go time now. But there's definitely a couple things, one scripture in particular, that has stuck out in my mind over the last couple years, I would say, more prominently so within like the last year or so, when things began to get really kind of heated, and definitely now, a particular scripture. And I've also heard it mentioned by others as well. And I kind of wanted to get into it a little bit today. It isn't necessarily the subject, but it ties into the subject, as we'll see as we go along. But oh man, lest we waste all the time in the preface, we can go ahead and get into it. I said that right there is going to be a situation. So let me, because I need to get over there in a moment. Let me get this timer going, just to make sure that we don't go terribly over. This up and running too. Clock. Stop watch. It's begun. All right. And the scripture that I wanted to get into to start out is found in the book of Proverbs. The great King Solomon, one of the wisest men to ever live, one of the wisest kings to ever live. And in his life is a great lesson. He was like, no prophetic vision. What exactly is it talking about? It kind kind of give some immediate knowledge, but line upon line, here a little and there a little, so that it makes sense scripturally, because no scripture is of any private interpretation, right? So I'm super calm right now in the midst of it all, and that's an important element, as many of us know, and keeping ourselves under control. Not that there won't be things, there won't be challenges, difficulties, and having to get back up again and all of those kinds of things, but remaining calm through it all. And the example that I'm thinking of prominently, and we're going to end up using time, is Yahshua, is Messiah, where the man was headed towards indescribable things, but they had been described to him enough that he was definitely aware of it and experiencing things physically and emotionally related to what was impending. And the woman who assisted him a great deal throughout the latter part of his ministry, before his going to rest and being resurrected and being our high priest over the house of Yahweh exclusively and only now today, she gave him calm. She gave him calm, you know. The things that by pouring the spikenard over his head, which is what those essential oils are part of, what those essential oils were imparting upon him, that she did that. It wasn't just because she wanted to try to impress him or to gain some points. It was done for, like he said, it was done to prepare his burial, but also to prepare him for what was getting ready to take place that will put him in the grave. Spikenard has a very calming effect. So I have that as a part of the oils that I place on my head on a daily basis, and there's other things, but calm. I remember when I was giving a speech one time, the advice that I gave to some, and it kind of gets your attention because of the word and how it's associated with negative things for the most part, but the advice that I gave was covet calm. Covet calm. Like, covet, you're not supposed to covet. Of course, the idea is just to have a very serious desire to pursue it, to actively pursue those things which will help us to remain calm. There's a number of different things that can help to trigger calm within us. The sense of smell. Not that it isn't great to be, energized, but it's possible to actually have both. To have energy and also to be able to channel that energy with calm focus. But, the sense of hearing, also the sense of touch, to have certain things laid upon us and coming in contact with us. So, all of that is what I was thinking of initially, and that helps us, that state of calm, to be able to think clearly, and to be mindful then of all of the various things that we need to do in navigating our challenges, whatever they might be, staying focused, getting back up, whatever the task at hand. But here in Numbers chapter 12, and so we'll end up using all of the time on that, and speaking about the subject of the prophetic vision and what it is that's involved in it. It says here in verse 6, and I'm mentioning all of that, the tie-ins that I'm trying not, I don't like saying stuff that have a tendency to kind of brag on oneself. To me, it's like I'm not interested in bragging on me. And if I perceive that it'll even come off that way, then I start to feel reluctant and hesitant and draw back. Whereas the world is like, you have to sell yourself. I'm not selling myself. You talking about, I've already been bought with a price. I'm not for sale. But I was mentioning all of that because it's one of the things I hear often. Like, man, are you even up this world? Is what one young person was telling me here recently. They were like, you even up this world? You're here, sir. Disrespectful. I think it was kind of lightweight disrespectful. You're here to sit in the clouds, but what they were trying to say, and another youth corrected that youth and pointed out and saying is, man, he's calm. He's calm, and that's what they were remarking on because they were misbehaving, but I wasn't losing it behind it. And that's what the person was remarking on. Like, man, what is this? Who does that? You're supposed to be angry right now. You're supposed to be coming unglued and yelling and screaming. That's what everybody else does. Not like everybody else in the world, but not of the world, because of what's been allowed at this time. But anyway, getting on to this explanation, teaching more about the, what's being spoken of here, which are the teachers, the subject that was covered today in Sabbath services, and kind of explaining why it is that I might, it's like, I'm wondering if my voice is even reaching the microphone, and all of this. The closer he got to it, the more things were done to help him to remain calm. Calm is just a very important part of all of this. So you can't provoking me, Father Yahweh. You're not provoking me. You can't provoke me. You provoke yourself. Get yourself into trouble, but you're not going to get me riled up. And all of these mistranslations that imply that people have that power over Father Yahweh is like, nah, no, you don't. Well, Father Yahweh keeps us cool. Father Yahweh remains calm and poised under all circumstances in any situation, and we, of course, are being made into his image and likeness. Not to say that there's a place for once again high energy, but even in that state, a person can be calm, believe it or not. When a person thinks in terms of what calm really is, which is keeping one's composure, you can have high energy and still have yourself completely and totally in control. But here in verse 6, in explaining what this prophetic vision is, it says, and he's and he said, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, will reveal myself to him. I will reveal myself to him in visions. I will speak to him in a dream. I will speak to him in a dream. So, of course, we know Father Yahweh is revealed to us in the knowledge of Yahweh. Nobody's ever seen him personally. And Yahweh himself, his name stands for that which was, that which is, and that which will be. So it's talking about all of this knowledge and understanding coming forth from Father Yahweh. And we have that with Moshe. And like explicitly, when he was like, reveal you, show yourself to me. And then in so doing, you have all of this information that starts coming to, Moshe. But who everybody accepts was a prophet. It says, if there is a prophet among you, if there is a prophet among you, I, Yahweh, will reveal myself to him in visions. If we haven't killed them, remember some youth that I had the privilege when I was yet working in one of the schools of the prophets with the young men there, a group of brothers. Used to always be involved in some conflict or another, but the older brother he had tripped the younger one somehow, somewhere, and he was on the ground. I came over there and told him to get up, and he was crying. He was like, "No, he killed me. He killed me." He didn't kill you. You wouldn't be able to talk if he killed you. You just get up. You'll be okay. But if you haven't killed them, and they did. That was one of the things that Messiah also reprimanded them for. And the great teacher spoke about it in one of the last sermons that he's given up until this time. Like every time Yahweh sent them a prophet, they would kill him. Every time Yahweh sent them an inspired teacher. It was obvious that the man, he had it. He had the gift. Not just somebody assigned to do it, but was actually an inspired teacher, gifted with the skills and the abilities to communicate Yahweh's word in a crystal clear, inspiringly, impactful, and persuasive way, knowledgeably and undeniably of Yahweh. They kill him. And so if there is a prophet among you, chosen and selected by Yahweh, and you haven't killed him, and Yahweh allowed that for them to be tested, of course, we can see that they have a great reward coming. It's a part of what's spoken of, the resurrection, and that you give reward to your servants, the prophets, that they were willing to continue to teach no matter what they were subjected to. They were willing to continue of their own volition, because it's all free will, nobody is forced. But the words that Yahweh put in them and commanded them to tell others that they were willing to do no matter what they might suffer, even their own lives, losing their own lives as an effect, as a result of doing so. If there is a prophet among you, I will speak to him I will reveal myself to him in visions. I will reveal knowledge to him in visions, and I will speak to him in dreams. So all of that, we're 12 minutes in, probably a little bit over 12, like 15, because I turned it on a little bit later. For the for the first part of verse 18 here, where it says, where there is no prophetic vision, either we're talking about a time period as was covered today in Sabbath services, and it's going to end up being about this. Rather than what I want to get to, which is a prophecy. And even here, Solomon is speaking of one, the son of a prophet. I don't know if Solomon was one, but David, his father, was definitely a prophet. There's instances in scripture where it shows that. It shows him going back to the school of the prophets when he suffered. We were speaking about a school of the prophets earlier, where I had the honor and the privilege of serving. Man, a lot can be said there. But he was also acquainted with one as well, affiliated with one as well. He wasn't even in the school of the prophets today. It's not just anybody that can just go to one of the schools. I'm not sure how many are functioning at this time. I know at least one is still operating, and I believe a second one is moving. All a part of the same network, kind of have different school districts, But at this time there was three, Still think about a lot of those young men to this day. But and obviously it'll end up becoming another conversation because everybody has an opinion. But I've always been one that's been willing to place accountability with leadership before anyone else. Before anyone else is held accountable for anything having gone wrong, leadership is held accountable first. And that's definitely, I believe, in line with what Father Yahweh has placed in the mind of wise men, where he tells us, man, at the end of this, it's the leaders who are going to receive the stricter judgment. Not they'll be, which means it's not going to be as strict in other cases. That's the comparison. Is comparative. Louder compared to something that's not as loud. Faster compared to something that's not as fast. Stricter compared to something that's not going to be as strict. But the stricter, if nothing else comparatively, is going to be those in position of leadership. And so I think about that first, but where David is concerned, just to wrap up that point, is he actually went to the school of the prophets, and he was accepted in there. He wasn't told, what are you doing here, and then stay right there and we'll send somebody out to talk to you. He was actually there. So David was indeed a prophet. When you put all of the pieces together about his life, he was a prophet who was made a king. At a certain point, I think he was mentioned today. He went through a lot of things, man, but he was a man after Yahweh's own heart. His own son rebelled against him, and a lot of other things. But he won't be a priestly king. He won't be a priestly king because eventually, man, he got into murder. He got into to taking people's lives. But that was after his calling, not prior to, but after his calling. I mean, then it's on your record. Then it's on your record. So um, he though trained his son Solomon, so that you'll see in a lot of cases, Solomon also gave a great deal of prophetic insight. Within the book of Proverbs and within the book of Ecclesiastes, there is prophecies concerning the end times, the last days. And the scripture that we're covering now is actually an example, an instance of that as well. But it says here, where there is no prophetic vision, where you don't have the prophet there that Father Yahweh is revealing information to, and he's communicating it to the people, and the impact and the effect that has, then the people perish. The people perish. So just in the immediate, one of the things that should come to mind before we have a definitive look at it, definitive in being like looking at the definition, is the word perishing traces back to some of the very first conversations that we were having, which is why I've advised that a person, if they have not looked at the episodes preceding this, that they would, because just like the word of Yahweh all ties in, it's a unity, here a little and there a little, line upon line. It's just a question of whether we understand how it ties in or not. Not that it doesn't, it does. The word of Yahweh is absolutely perfect and pure. That which is in front of Father Yahweh that he's studying regularly, and what Yahshua is studying regularly, is without flaw. And the question is just how much of it we understand and how clear it is that we have it in a foreign tongue today. But it's a foreign tongue like English. It's just foreign to the original tongue that it was communicated in, which is Hebrew. We just have translations and versions. And often, that's where a lot of problems exist. But it's all according to Father Yahweh's plan. He imparts understanding and insight according to his will and for his purposes. But that takes us back to the beginning, the people perishing with the two trees. There's the tree of life and there's the tree of death, or the tree that brings about perishing, the tree of perishing. So, whether you don't have that prophet that has that impact and that knowledgeableness and that wisdom and has that understanding and is able to move people as a result of it in a positive and in a righteous way, people start going to that other way. The people start to perish. One of the definitions for that, just a couple, and we need to get into other things as well. One of the definitions for that is, come on, him. What did he just do? Go back. Give me a moment. I'm hoping it picks up my voice. Because one of the things these days, I just don't raise my voice a lot. But a part of the definition for perishing, speaking about that tree of perishing, there's a level of knowledge there. The knowledge of Yahweh has, as we've been covering, a number of different levels of complexity, and a part of the job of the teacher is being able to extract a particular facet, a particular aspect, make evident a particular layer, and communicate it in a way that's simplified so that it's crystal clear. And the challenge could be at times not putting too much on the plate, but so there's that where there isn't the prophets, where there isn't the inspired formed teachers of Father Yahweh, then the people begin to go that other way, and that's what's taking place from the time of the beginning. The great prophet Abel was taken out of the way, and The world started going headlong to that other way. But then also, where there is no prophet, the people begin to perish looking into it. There's no prophetic vision. The people begin to perish looking into it. One of the definitions is to loosen. When you have a group of people in there was that prophet that was there, undeniably, of Father Yahweh. The scriptures haven't identified them as that, even if they were humble enough that they wouldn't call themselves that on occasion, which was the great teacher Israel Barker. I'm not a prophet of Yahweh. On other occasions, he would say that he was Yahweh's prophet, but rather he was willing to say it of himself or not. He acknowledged the times that he would avoid, just like I was saying earlier, bringing forth certain things because he didn't want to come off as haughty, as building himself up. But whether he was willing to say it or not, the book of Revelation, the scripture says that he was a prophet. Um, when you have a prophet and the people are inspired for the sake of righteousness to improve themselves and to be morally in line, and then he's gone, for example, or in his stead, those who have, like the great prophet Eliah, after he was taken away, and the portion of his spirit, a portion of his spirit, a double portion, was given to his selected and chosen student, the one that Father Yahweh selected and chose. And it was, everybody knew it. Like, man, he's just like Eliah. Whether it be the great prophet or those that people might have remarked on having to do with the great witness. Like, it's obvious that man's got it. If that prophet is taken away, or if that person is rejected, where there is no prophetic vision, then things begin to get loose. People start to loosen is one of the definitions that's given there, and there are other definitions given there too, like expose, which will make sense, as we go into this a little bit more. But it doesn't really benefit one to just start rambling off a bunch of definitions. The truth of the matter is, what I've always said to people is, and I have a tendency to do this. I remember one of the great one of the great priests, one of the great Kohans, the great Kohan Michael. One of his cautions to me is, like, man, don't. Sometimes we tell me just to lay it all out there and to be plain concerning certain things, but in other cases he was like, man, hold back, don't give so much. I'll just start. If I know it, you can have it. But a wise man doesn't speak everything on his mind. And so you have to be able to demonstrate a measure of restraint in the midst of it. Because, knowledge in the wrong hands can be dangerous. So, I was going to give a particular thing there, but I'm just going I'm going to refrain from doing so. But just suffice it to say that every single word in there has significance. So a person can just ramble it off, but it doesn't have much benefit there. But rest assured, every single definition provided there has significance. It's just a question of whether or not we understand how it does. But the definition that I wanted to get to, though, outside of loosening, what takes place when either the prophet is not present, or there is a prophet, but it's a matter of free will and choice as to whether or not he's accepted. If he's rejected, and then the ultimate result of that rejection, whether he's a major or minor prophet, they eventually get to the point where they regard him so little that they kill him. One of the results of that is that the people then, and in the aftermath of that, as a result of that, people start to get loose, And another definition that I wanted to touch on is they go back. People start to go back as one of the consequences. Now this actually here, we're spending a lot of time on this particular one. We're not covering all of it. I'm still skipping over stuff, but the objective is to get to other stuff. And so I need to kind of wrap this one up. But it says here, but blessed is he who keeps the law. But blessed is he who keeps the law. And so what we have in this case is an analogy, actually. So you have and analogies take a number of different forms, a number of different forms. That's one thing that we actually covered, and I can remember fondly one of the lessons that we actually covered in the School of the Prophets is the fact that, you know, analogies take a number of different forms, and one of the exercises that we had was understanding the different forms that analogies take. And you know, I'm pretty sure there's ones that we can't even understand at this particular point in time because of our limited capacity to think, and because of how much higher Father Yahweh's thinking is with regard to ours. Not comparison, there is no comparison, but with regard to ours. Um, but where analogies exist, you know, you have two things that are being compared, and this is actually an analogy here. Whether we're able to classify what kind of analogy it is or not, what you have is one example where there is not prophetic vision, there isn't the prophet, you know, dead or rejected, whatever the case might be, and then what you have on the other side, and the result that comes about, you know, in consequence. And then in the other instance, the other example, what you have is what takes place where there is a prophet present. And that's what, and not just that, but the prophet is embraced. He who accepts a prophet as a prophet receives a prophet's reward, that kind of thing. But blessed is he who keeps the law. Now that's law like, not like law like the bar, but if you look up the word, it's law like Torah, which you look into the definition of it, and it's the whole body of prophetic teaching. Blessed is he who keeps the whole body, the blessing that they receive as a result of that prophet being present and them embracing that prophet, that teacher, gifted teacher. You know, and there's a difference. A prophet is a teacher, but he's more than just a teacher. It's not like something, you know, an assignment that's given to somebody does it begrudgingly and they wipe their brow afterwards and, you know, on to other things. He's a different kind of, you know, it's kind of like somebody that's an instructor, because a lot of what we see taking place in the world, which is just a counterfeit of the original way, um, you know, gives us insight. Like the word senators, you can actually find, we have a government now that's run on senators. You find senators actually in scripture. So it shows you where all of this stuff comes from. But the different levels of teacher that exist within the educational systems, even now, you know, you have somebody who's a teacher, but it's a difference between somebody who's a teacher and somebody who's a professor, you know. But at the same time, they're both just teachers, but one definitely represents another scholastic level, you know, another level of studiousness, another level of learning. So there's a difference that I'm speaking about. If you look at the different offices, you'll have teachers, but then you'll also have, beyond the teacher, you'll have a prophet, but a prophet is just a teacher. So it shows you that there's something more there to it. But as the great teacher told us, he's really just a different rank, a different level of, you know, a teacher. And even at the top of it, where you have somebody who's an apostle, you like Shaul said, he learned first. And then after he became a teacher, after he learned what to teach, then he went out to teach what he had learned. And so even where the apostle is concerned, you have just a different level of a teacher. And, you know, the important lesson to be learned there, that's essentially what we're seeing, like was covered today in Sabbath services. This whole entire episode is going to end up being about this scripture. We're 30 minutes into it as opposed to what I wanted it to be, but, you know, Yahweh's in control. But, you know, just like we were learning today about the teachers, it's all about the teachers. So, all of that, what it's speaking about here, though, is you know, blessed is he who is able to keep the whole body of prophetic teaching, because there is a prophet present. There is somebody that Father Yahweh is communicating to, giving, you know, insights. And the great teacher used to say Yahweh would hit him on the head and point out certain things to him. And then once it wasn't just for him, When you are strong, and I'm not afraid of this message, because in it the strength of Yahweh is revealed. Different things are revealed to that prophet. When you are strengthened, strengthen your brothers. That person is made strong by that which is revealed, that which is pointed out to him. And that's the job of a teacher, to point out things. And Yahweh is the ultimate teacher. But then that teacher has a responsibility of pointing out to and strengthening his brothers as well. And iron sharpens iron in that way. But when the teacher is present, then the blessing is that a person is able to keep the whole body of prophetic teaching. The whole body of it, prophetic teaching. Like, man, this guy know every sermon. Like, every sermon we put up, but he's saying what pastor getting ready to say before he said it. This guy know every sermon, remember every scripture. But it's a gift that comes along with the office, the gift of memory, of understanding, being able to tie things in. And it's all Father Yahweh. Without him, we would be nothing. But it's just evidence of Father Yahweh's appointment that people have certain gifts. If nothing else, that gift says it. Whether men agree with it or not, well, Yahweh's position is evident that the gift is present. Because otherwise, Father Yahweh is not a waster. He would not have given it to that one. So, were it not for him to use it. And it's up to him whether or not he does, irregardless of what comes his way. So, this word keeping, though, is being able to keep it on their minds, because that teacher is present there. Sabbath after Sabbath, occasion after teaching occasion, rehearsing and reminding the person of those things that the former prophets have spoken. And like Yahshua would say, it will be those things, and in some cases also bringing out new things. Not new like different, but new like from the standpoint of expounding. So that's what it's talking about there when the word is keep is actually used. The opposite, or the other facet of the analogy, is that a person is then able to keep. He's able to keep. He is blessed because he is able to keep the whole body of prophetic teaching. That helps him to be able to see things in perspective, and to not be vulnerable as a result of the ignorance that's produced in the absence of the teachers. One of the points that was also made today concerning it, where a generation came up that didn't remember Yahweh because they had, the teachers were gone and nobody was keeping it on their mind. So the blessing is that when a prophet is present, that people have that opportunity to have it kept on their minds. And a part of that definition of keep is to store up in the memory and to retain. So all of that, but getting on to another point that I wanted to mention, that gets us back to what we've been covering up until now, having to do with the two ways, or the two cups. I don't know if we pointed it out until, at this time, up until this point, the title has, but scripturally, I don't know that we've gone there, but there's the cup of Yahweh and the cup of demons. And what we've been talking about is the cup of demons, wherein is contained the seven last plagues, the seven last judgments of Yahweh. And this ties into it, actually. So another definition for this perishing here, when the teachers aren't present, so that there is prophetic vision. When the prophets, because it could be more than one. And just like we saw in the example of the great prophet Elia and Elisha, the job of the prophet, the school of the prophet and so forth, is to bring forth other prophets. The job of teachers, sincere teachers, is to bring forth other teachers. It's on the people as to whether or not they take advantage of the opportunity, but the goal and the objective of the teacher is clear. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Another definition, even if you look that up, is make naked. is make naked. But in the translator's notes, it says made naked. So where there is no prophetic vision, the people are made naked. Are made naked. And that's one of the points that I wanted to get into, because that gets us back to then, and this is what he's talking about. This is what he's speaking about. If you go to Revelations chapter 16, which is what we've been covering, and the sixth plague, if you go down to verse 15, and with all of that in our minds, it's like the great teacher used to say, certain scriptures really don't make sense unless you're aware of other scriptures. If you have other things in mind, but then as you go to other scriptures, it helps you to keep things in line upon line. You're able to see more clearly what's being spoken of there. But it says, behold, I'm coming as a thief. Yahshua speaking about it. And that ties into other scriptures. It shouldn't, but where there is no prophetic vision, the people fail. On those who are perishing, he'll be as a thief. But as the scripture said, not on people who have the blessing of being able to keep the prophetic teaching at the forefront of their minds. They'll be expecting it. It won't be caught. It won't come upon them as a thief. Blessed, same word, same word we find back here in Proverbs chapter 19, 18. But blessed is he. Blessed is he who watches, who's able to watch. That's able to see, so that they know what to watch for, which is another one of the ways that the prophet, the one that Father Yahweh would give prophetic vision, was referred to as in scripture as a seer. Not a seer like searing a great steak or something like that to lock in flavor, but a seer, somebody who's actually able to see. Father Yahweh is giving them the vision to be able to see things clearly prophetically. When that teacher is present, the people are blessed. And this is talking about the same thing, because they then are able to watch. They know what to watch for. There's the knowledge of the things that were, but there's also the knowledge of the things that are, that are taking place, and the things that are coming, as we covered in another episode. The blessing of that teacher being present, and the person embracing that teacher, like the great teacher Israel Abel Hawkins, the great witness, used to tell us, part of reverencing Yahweh is respecting. Getting over whatever jealousy or envy might be present, or the pride for having things pointed out, or whatever might be taking place that puts animosity or enmity between the teacher and someone being taught. The reverence of Yahweh is respecting the teachers that are sent teachers. As Father Yahweh sends them, as they come along. And one of the blessings that they receive is that they're then able to watch. And that's, what Messiah told us we have to do in this time period. And they're able to keep their garments. They're able to keep their garments rather than being made new. See how the analogy is tying in? It makes sense. And is able to keep his garments. Or, if he doesn't, rejects the prophetic teachings and so forth, or the teacher that's teaching them, who is a prophet, he will be made nude. He will walk naked, as we were looking at just a moment ago. And they will see his shame. He will be exposed. So, all of that, we finally got to it. The whole episode ended up becoming that. But I just wanted to touch on it briefly. But this is a part of all of this is a part of the sixth plague. All of this is a part of the sixth plague, the information covered under the sixth plague, which is the time period. Speaking about this time period of the seven last plagues is what it's talking about. But of course, this is where we are centrally focused, because we're all looking forward to, and not because we relish the idea of people dying, but just because of where it puts us prophetically. And there's great consolation and comfort in seeing the prophecies fulfilled, and all of us are looking forward to the finish line. So we're for that in our minds, we have our thinking situated more than anything else on the events of the sixth plague, having to do with the events in and around the great river Euphrates that will ultimately produce, we will ultimately see come forth from it the first nuclear destruction. But that's just a part of it. That's not all of the sixth plague. That's just a part of the sixth plague. The sixth plague, from a general standpoint, as we see here up at the top, is the drying up of the area in and around the great river Euphrates, which is basically talking about depopulation. But at its height, it's definitely going to include nuclear warfare, so that certain people can have their way. The kings of the east can have their way in that region. But it's not only just there. They have plans for the entire world, but it's starting there. So that's what we see closer up top in verse 12. And what we were speaking about is the other areas of the book of Yahweh, the word of Yahweh, that give us further details concerning this particular plague, which is also of that cup of the seven last plagues that's being poured out, and all nations are partaking of in this time period. It doesn't say so there. It says, like we were looking at earlier, speaking about people drinking of the other cup here, and in certain scriptures, like in verse 6, giving them blood to drink. We covered what that's talking about. It's talking about the redness in that cup. And then in other cases, outright here in we're still in Revelation chapter 16, in verse, where is it? I think it's verse, 8, in verse 19, 16, Revelation 16 and 19, it mentions the cup outright. In other chapters, like Revelation chapter 18, let me see. It's a lot of time, but okay, I'm not. Now I want to do it. Finish what you start, young man. The cup that she has mixed for her double. So Revelation chapter 18 and verse 6, it speaks of that cup, and it's just all over the book of Revelations. And the chapter that precedes it speaks of that cup as well. And it's Yahshua that's doing the teaching in the book of Revelations. He was a prophet, and all of this is the vision that was given to him, the great apostle Yachanan said. So he is still a great prophet even to this day. But the teachings that he gives here on the cup precede even the book of Revelations that was spoken of by other prophets as well before him. The spirit of the prophets is subject to the prophets. The prophets teaching and build on one another and expound each other. Same today, But what we saw is that these events that are in the sixth plague, even these are a part of that cup when we look at the writings of other teachers, like the great prophet Zechariah in chapter 12, where if we look at verse 12 or chapter 12 and verse 2, it says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all the surrounding peoples," right? All of the neighboring peoples. So we see there that these events that are taking place in the area in and around the great river Euphrates, everything that's taking place with Jerusalem, it's also of that cup, where it is containing the seven last plagues. And in this instance, what we're talking about is the sixth plague. And I'm just trying to move this here to that chapter, in the event that we need to look anything up. Okay. So it says here, Just give us perspective on it, it says the prophecy of doom. But if you look up that doom, it just means judgments. It's, seven last judgments. The prophecy concerning the judgments of Yahweh, in this case, it's talking about the seven last judgments of the word of Yahweh for Israel. For Israel, talking about Israel. So that lets us know, what we're speaking of. And we're running out of time, so I'm not gonna be able to get it in this episode either, y'all, because I'm gonna have to cut it off. But this ended up being about the information that was given by the great prophet, given by the prophet's son, David's son Solomon, and getting us up to this point. But what I want to do is cover what's taking place here in detail. But it says this is the prophecy concerning though what's taking place with Israel, what's on the news and all of this stuff, the peace treaty. This is talking about them, and there's a question. Father Yahweh has written scriptures in a way that certain people will not understand. Are we talking about Israel the land, or Israel the man? Israel the land, or Israel the man? All of that's a matter of discernment. And this is actually talking about Israel the land. Same thing that's in the news all the time, and it's a part of that cup. The seven last plagues. It says, "Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling to all of the surrounding peoples, all of its neighbors in their region," which is the language that it uses in the news, "when they will come in siege both against Yada and Jerusalem." They, Israel, when they will be in siege both against Yada, which is the West Bank, as we've covered, and Jerusalem, when they will be trying to take the West Bank and Jerusalem as a part of this great plan to expand the borders of Israel. So that's where we presently are in prophecy, and I'm going to have to cut it off at that point, and we will pick up next episode. And with the next episode, though, we're going to start right at that point, and then we're going to get deeper into the prophecies and the fulfillment of it as is shown, making it sound, and all of the comfort that comes about as a result of that. There's no ambiguity. It's all been given to us, and Father Yahweh does have teachers who are yet present to explain it to us. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and join us next time for more Seeds of the Witness.